Buongiorno. This film, Winter, is set in Kashmir, the world's largest militarized zone. Now, if you can imagine, there are more armed soldiers in Kashmir than in Iraq and Afghanistan combined. And this conflict dates back to 1947, when India gained its independence from British rule and Pakistan was carved out as a separate nation. At the time, Kashmir was an independent princely state. But because it was bordering Pakistan, and Pakistan was formed as a separate nation for Muslims, and Kashmir being a Muslim majority state, they claimed it as their own. But the ruler at the time in Kashmir was Hindu, and he asked the Indian government, newly formed Indian government, for help when Pakistan tried to annex this territory. After a brief war, a major part of this territory came under Indian rule, and another part was under Pakistani rule. In 1989, a full-blown militant insurgency started against Indian rule in Indian-administered Kashmir. So if you look at any international map of Kashmir, you won't find a color or well-defined boundaries. It'll probably say disputed territory or under Indian administration, under Pakistani administration, and there'll be lines drawn across this region, like prison bars, like a grid. Now, I would like you to imagine, instead of this grid, a thin sheet of ice covering this region, and invite you inside that thin sheet into the winter of discontent of our protagonist, Nargis, whose husband has left her and become a militant rebel to fight for Kashmir's freedom against India. Now, Nargis is a rural woman, a village woman, an illiterate woman, but she has a skill that all of Kashmir was always known for. She's a weaver. She's a craftswoman. She's been weaving shawls all her life. And she's been weaving this one particular shawl ever since her husband left. And this shawl is like an emotional barometer of Nargis. This act of weaving, like Penelope, tells us about her emotional state, because she sometimes weaves and she sometimes unravels the weave. In her daily struggles, she finds support from a cousin, a distant cousin, who's also in the handicrafts trade, and helps her monetarily sometimes, or in bringing her yarn for her shawls. But Nargis cannot really reciprocate his advances. It's obvious he likes her, because she's in a state of limbo. She is what people in Kashmir call half-widows, women whose husbands have disappeared and they have no status. You will never know whether they're dead or alive. There are about 10,000 such cases in Kashmir of enforced disappearances. But then, the only happiness in our story, the husband does return. Manzoor does return. But he is no Odysseus to our Penelope. He is no victorious warrior. He comes back almost unrecognizable, even to her. He's a broken man, a tormented soul, because he was captured and tortured by the Indian army. But Nargis forgets everything, and she puts all her energies into rehabilitating Manzoor, making him whole again. But it's all futile. She reminds Manzoor only of his inadequacies, his failure, his impotence. And even though he has been set free, he will never truly be free, because he has to report back to an Indian army camp on a weekly basis, where a colonel pressurizes him to collaborate, to inform on other potential militants. Manzoor fights his demons, working in a stone quarry, self-flagellating himself till he reaches breaking point, which leads to an event which will have devastating consequences on the lives of these people. And on a day that Nargis has finished weaving her shawl, she will have to choose between her love for Manzoor and her own freedom. Now, I left Kashmir in 1990 as an 18-year-old, around the same time when this conflict started, and I have been looking back and trying to make sense of this violent struggle for identity. And as much as it is important for me to find my own voice as a storyteller, it is equally important for me to give voice to these unheard stories of my people. I'm Aamir Bashir. I'm the writer-director of Winter. And this is Alan McAlex, the producer of Winter.
I've been a line producer and executive producer on numerous features before I set up my production company, Jar Pictures, based in Mumbai. Jar Pictures has produced 6 feature films over the last 3 years, including one that premiered in Cannes last year. I've known Aamir for the last 10 years, where we have worked on numerous features, him as an actor and me as a line producer. I was the executive producer on Aamir's first feature film, Autumn, which was shot entirely in Kashmir. Autumn was recognized worldwide and within India as a humanistic insider's view on the Kashmir conflict. Our core crew, the DP, the production designer, will remain the same. It's essentially the same group of team coming together to make this film. Winter is the second part of what will hopefully be Aamir's Kashmir trilogy. And Winter will be my third feature to be shot in that region. So I feel confident that we have the necessary prior experience to execute this production successfully and safely. Kashmir is a region which has no history of cinema, nor a film industry. In fact, has no cinema halls at all. And I believe Aamir is the only Kashmiri filmmaker making films on Kashmiris and the current conflict. In that sense, I believe he is best placed to bring these unheard stories to an audience around the world. Thank you.